had, in terms of status, like a lot to risk. I'm willing to lose it all for the sake of my values and ethics and morals. Being silent or compliant is a choice.
In systems built on compliance, I sometimes wonder, the people rising to the top, are they actually the most compliant?
I think obedience is partly a character trait. So some personalities avoid conflict naturally, but it's mostly conditioned. When you make a choice to become a politician, you choose to willingly go into a system that is highly, highly corrupt. When you step into a corrupt system, the odds that you will not be corrupted are very low. The IMF saying you're not allowed to do that anymore, and them doing it, like recently they have bought $100 million worth of Bitcoin for their reserve.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I also see people that analyze it and said that we're just shifting the Bitcoins around. I don't know. I hope.
If they're lying about buying $100 million worth of Bitcoin, then that will be exposed and it will be, wow. You can be censored. You can be closed down at any minute. The risk of a Western country turning into a totalitarian country is very real. In fact, I believe it's already happening.
My guest today is Efrat Fenigson, an independent journalist and freedom advocate who isn't afraid to speak up when others don't. I first noticed Efrat after outspoken criticism surrounding the October 7th attack in Israel. She's a strong voice for Bitcoin, free speech, and personal sovereignty, even as she faces censorship herself, including the shutdown of her Telegram channel. Today we're talking about the topic of obedience, at a time when governments are increasingly expanding systems of surveillance and control. Why do so many people comply, even when it's wrong? Why do some people question authorities while others don't? Is it a character thing, or is it conditioning? Efrat is a perfect guest to talk about these topics. And you would do me a big favor if you hit the like button, subscribe and share. It will help my channel reach a wider audience. Thank you so much for your support. And now let's dive in. We're talking a lot about freedom, and the other side would probably be obedience. Do you think there's good obedience or not? And if there is, where is the border between good obedience and bad obedience?
So I think, the only thing I would define as good obedience is when you have a very strong center, I call it. You have a set of values that is based on a mission in life and a purpose. And the mission is derived from your purpose. So when you know what your purpose is and you know what the mission is, and then you have a set of values that are derived from that, and then how you carry yourself in the world is that you are compliant with those values. So you are in obedience with those values. I would say this is good obedience, right? Like in general, that word obedience gives me a negative connotation, but I'm trying to think of where would it have a positive connotation. I think in the sense of, if I look at obedience in the sense of integrity, so, you conform and you comply with something that you have made a promise to comply with in your life because it's based on morals and good values and ethics, then that's good obedience for me. It's like alignment with conscious ethics and voluntary cooperation. This is good obedience. When I look at bad obedience, it's like you just follow orders regardless of what kind of morals or ethics lie behind them. You follow orders that could violate personal values or could harm others, but you follow them regardless because you are more conscious about following the orders than you are of respecting someone's morals and ethics. I mean, when you say morals and ethics, it should be like I think a consensus about like not harming people and have voluntary participation or cooperation in things in life. So the line is crossed the moment the obedience requires suppressing your moral intuition, or the moment the obedience requires stepping on someone else's free will and choice, and you violate that.
Yeah, I think even though it has a negative connotation, I think we all started with obedience in some way. As a child, you kind of listen to your parents, even though you don't understand everything they say, but there's a certain trust.
Yeah, and there's a rule set that you, as a child, there's a rule set. First of all, as a child, there is a contract between you and the parent. And the parent is under that contract. The parent is supposed to love you, care for you, and keep you safe from harm, no matter what the consequences are. Like, this is you as a child, this is what you expect your parent. And the parent would expect you to listen to them, to trust them, right? That's more like, when I really simplify it, that's the contract. And inside that framework, there will be rules, and you as a child will be required to adhere to those rules and to be obedient with them. But you have, as long as you respect the contract, which is you trust the parent and you listen to the parent, you have a lot of freedom inside of that obedient framework, right?
Yeah.
So, and I think, this is a very good example of children and parents, but then you can take it forward to any system in life, because we continue to be individuals in life, but we operate inside frameworks. So every system or every framework we enter into has a certain rule set, has a certain structure, and we are required to accept, or if we want to participate in that system. But the moment the lines are crossed, I think, and it's like a breakup of the contract, is when the trust is broken, and when the contract is no longer being respected on both sides. Yeah.
Yeah.
In a way. So in every system, the contract will be a bit different. And there is always a promise. There is always a contract in a system between the system and the framework and the ones that are willing to abide or willing to accept the rules of the system. And the moment something breaks there, then we cross the lines, and then we have to look at, are we continuing to comply, even though something was broken in the very foundational level of the promise? Or can we question it now? Can we dissent it now? Can we criticize it? Can we blame someone? Can we, you know what I mean? Can we take an action?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, at some point, I think, at least in Western culture, there's a point where the obedience should turn into free will and sovereignty, and an individual that is able to make free choices. I think at least that's the goal.
I don't think obedience turns into free will. I think free will is what we're born with. It's always there.
Yeah, that was not a good wording. That's true.
The question is, how is that free will continued to be respected throughout our lives in the various systems we participate in?
Yeah, but I mean, it comes from a certain trust where we are brought to that situation or where we can develop own will and own reasoning, I guess. And yeah, I mean, if I think about COVID, there was such a drastic experience for me. 80% of people just started following orders. And of course, it was in a way a good setup because there was medical authority involved, there was politics involved, but a certain or the biggest part of people were just obeying, and a smaller part were not obeying. And what do you think was the reason for that division? Was it mainly character? Was it information? What was the main reason?
The main reason for complying, for
That it was kind of split into sections and the majority was just obeying?
Well, I think in this sense, it's a good reference for you here would be the brilliant conversation that Professor Matthias Desmet had with Tucker Carlson back in the day, a few years ago during COVID.
Mhm.
And he broke down, he did it in many of his talks, but also in that specific conversation, he breaks down how society in his eyes was actually divided to three, not to two, the ones who complied and the ones who didn't comply, but rather the ones who complied blindly, the ones who didn't comply, and that was clear. And the third group was the ones that may have not wanted to comply or
Mhm.
had no strong opinion about complying or not complying, but they were simply sitting there idle and not choosing, and by not choosing they were complying. So like the big group that you call the ones that comply, you say 80%, I don't know where the number comes from, but the big group that did comply is also made up of a subgroup that is probably the larger chunk of it, of people that don't know, don't want to know, don't take the time to experiment, to observe or to check anything or to learn anything. They just like go with the flow, and they keep quiet because they don't want to get in trouble. And then I think the question becomes, why do people, like you said, why do they follow orders? Like, why do they follow orders that may not, to us, it was clear that those orders are not in our favor, or they may harm us, or, there is something risky about them. So we were questioning and waiting, stopping and waiting to think about it and check it and all that. Why did other people not do the same? And why did they start being very aggressive towards those who weren't
Mhm.
operating the same way they did? And I think there are several reasons for that. I think the most strong reason is fear. I mean, there was a lot of what, again, Professor Desmond calls free-floating anxiety around the time where the whole COVID shenanigans started. And that anxiety can be attributed to various things in the world and in society, economic pressures, a lot of pressure regarding education, cost of living. The West is like deteriorating. We both know that the underlying pressure can be attributed to fiat burden, like things that are related to the monetary system, but people are, on the large part, not aware of it. They just feel that life is becoming harder and they don't really know why. So that anxiety of having to make the day and survive, and and make a living, and you find yourself working harder and harder, and you're very frustrated because you may not be fulfilled with what you're doing, but you have to work in order to pay mortgage or pay debts or all that. This is a symptom of the fiat monetary system. So all of that was already there as a kind of a prerequisite for when COVID arrived and sparked that anxiety, turned that anxiety into aggressiveness, into, they were playing on that anxiety and that fear. And obviously, with a lot of propaganda and a lot of mind control, they were able to exaggerate that anxiety into fear, into real life-risking kind of fear. You're gonna die if you don't do da 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 da, and your grandma will die, and the world will be the end of the world pandemic. Right? They said it so many times. This is like so they exaggerate everything to get you very fearful. And then that fear, you start, there are various different types of fear. And then you start with the most extreme fear, which is the fear of death. You play on that and you get people compliant. And then there are other types of fear that are coming into play as well. The fear of being socially excluded. So if you speak differently, or if you stop and not do what everyone else is doing, or if you ask questions, you can be excluded from society. And we as human beings, we're social creatures. We don't want to be alone. We want to belong. We want to be loved. That's like our very natural tendency. So you play on that fear as well. Social exclusion, punishment. The fear of being punished, right? You don't want to be punished. You have a negative association with that from when you were a child. You know that if you don't take the jab, you may lose your work. You know that if you don't wear a mask, someone will yell at you. These are all forms of punishments and consequences that we try to prevent in life because we don't like bearing those consequences. So that's another type of fear. And the other type of fear is maybe loss of status. So you have a certain status in life. You have a good job, you have a good reputation, people respect you in your workplace, in your family, whatever it is. And you can risk losing that status if you don't comply, if you're not obedient. And that is a very real fear for many people because their identity is not strong enough on their own. Their individualism is not strong enough on their own to even consider that type of fear, that type of, dealing with the consequences of losing their status. It's the whole world for them, right? So for example, if I just open brackets here, for me, I was in a very good, quote unquote, good position in my life when COVID started. I was 40 years old. I have a 10-year-old son. I have a good career that I've been working on for the past probably 15 years in tech and marketing. I hold a very high position in global companies. I had a business with 2 partners. On top of holding the position and managing a lot of people, making a lot of money, a lot of fiat at the time. And I was part of the management of the company, and a lot of people reported to me, and I was reporting directly to the CEO, and the local tech community knew me really well, not just local, actually global, in Silicon Valley as well. My reputation was up there. I was even awarded in 2022 one of the top 100 most influential tech leaders in Israel.
Okay, I didn't know that.
Yeah. So my reputation. Speaking of reputation and status, it was all in place. My business that I had with 2 partners was a community of 150 CMOs like myself, global CMOs from various global companies. And I was running that business for 7 years very successfully. So I had also a good reputation thanks to that. And plus, I'm a friendly person. I had a lot of social circles and I was invited to all these places. So I had, in terms of status, a lot to risk. I knew that the moment I make that conscious decision to not be obedient anymore to what the state or the government was telling me, I am risking that status. But I was strong enough to consider that and to say, I'm willing to take that chance. I'm willing to take that risk. I'm willing to lose it all for the sake of my values and ethics and morals and truth, even if my state is going to be completely dismantled or hurt. I'm okay with that. But most people will not do that. They did not want to risk the reputation, the status. It was too much for them. Then there's the desire to belong. So we said, the fear of social exclusion is also the desire to belong. But it's not just the fear of not belonging. It's also the desire to belong, because when you belong to a certain group, like I was, like everyone is a part of some groups, then the association with that group becomes sometimes more important to you than who you are. Like because you know how for identity, for reputation and identity, people really hold on or cling on to their belonging to a certain group. Like when you'd ask someone, what do? They'll go, I'm a member of blah, blah, blah. Or I'm a CEO of this and that. Or I'm working for this and that. Like the first thing, the way they will present themselves will be part of a group. They won't say, I am a freedom lover. I am whatever, this is them being part of a group will be very strong on the scale of their identity. And so the desire of belonging and have that identity with a group is sometimes far more powerful than people's own values and morals and ethics. And then there's the cognitive laziness.
Mm-hmm.
So when
choosing
you
comfort, choosing
sorry?
for comfort.
Yeah, you know that one really well. So when we outsource our judgment to someone else, to an authority, to an expert, then we're just being lazy, because at that moment, we dropped the responsibility on someone else, and it became much easier, quote unquote, for us to not work too hard. And I call that being cognitive lazy. Like you can actually decide that you take the time and the intellectual effort to analyze some information and data and then make a choice for yourself and discern. But when you don't even consider doing that, and you much rather to just outsource your power or your judgment to someone else who is deemed an expert or an authority, then you give your power away, and you stay powerless, and you're definitely obedient, but it feels easier and it's less complicated. And then the last thing I would say is the trauma and the conditioning from childhood to associate obedience with safety. Because the moment we are obedient, we feel more safe. If we do what our parents tell us to do, we're safer, because they'll, the moment we start not listening to what our parents tell us to do, we risk being on our own or being punished, or, it's less safe. Just as a child, this trauma is ingrained in our consciousness, that if we start becoming disobedient, we are less safe now. And we have to make it on our own. For a child, this is very traumatic. This is very hard, understandably, naturally. For an adult, we oftentimes fall to that trap that we still need that safety. And by being obedient, we have that safety, like the government protects us, or the workplace protects us, or certain social rules protect us, or the health public system is protecting us. the public health system is protecting us, and then we're safer. So that association of obedience with safety is derived from our trauma in childhood. And I think we don't take the time to remind ourselves that we are safe and we are loved always. And we don't need we don't need to outsource that as well. And we can decouple that link between obedience and safety.
Yeah. Wow. Very interesting. Yeah, I mean, to me, it's there's like three ways, and one is like when I look at the milligram experiment, so people obeying to do stuff even though they don't believe in it at all. And then people doing stuff because they believe it, but they believe misinformation and propaganda. And then there's this systemic part where we hardly have any choice. We're talking about fiat money. So I'm kind of obedient to the fact that I have to distribute my purchasing power to stuff that the government finances. And it's hardly something that I can change unless you use Bitcoin. So my question
I totally agree with you on that point of like the incentives. And I think that that's where you look at systems setting certain incentive structures and certain norms, and the incentive structures and the norms that are set inside the system are shaping our behavior. So obviously people comply because they have to be in line with the incentives that are in the system. There's no doubt about it. But people forget that they still hold the agency to question or to step out of the norm, step out of the incentive structure, to question that behavior. And being silent or compliant is a choice. For most people, it doesn't occur as a choice. It's a default. It's an automatic reaction because they are not conscious to everything we talked about until now. And I think, if you really want to ask the pertinent question of, so what is it really that makes someone stand up and say, no, that doesn't feel right, and I'm willing to pause and dwell on it and maybe do something about it? I always say this is the spark. This is the godly spark that we have inside of us. And that spark is a spark of life. It's a spark of freedom. It's a spark of free will. It's a spark of truth. It's a spark of the morals and ethics, right, that derive from that. If we don't have that spark, if it's been shut down we all have it as godly creatures, I believe, but I think most of us are walking around in life with that spark being so covered, so suppressed, that when something happens and the invitation to choose presents itself, we either silence it or we don't even hear it because of how suppressed that spark is, right? And that's why I always tell people, those people who woke up and stood up to the atrocities of COVID, but also to other things that are happening around the world. There is so much to choose from right now, right? There's an ample of it. I think it all boils down to that spark. Are you willing to acknowledge that godly spark that is within you and then take agency and act on it? Or are you going to let it sit there and be completely numb I mean, it's in you, but will you let it be numb or silenced, covered up and completely, I forget, there's a good word I want to use, but it slips my mind. I'll remember it later. But are you willing to wake this up, that spark, and then act on it? So I think obedience is partly a character trait. So some personalities avoid conflict naturally, but it's mostly conditioned. It's mostly conditioned by our upbringing, by our childhood, by our past and things that happen to us, because behavior that is rewarded becomes our identity. So when we are doing things that are obedient to the system we're in and we are being rewarded for it, that shapes our identity. It becomes our identity. And that is very strong behaviorally. And that is conditioned. That is built with life, like with things that happened and things you assumed about what happened, your interpretations, and then the traumas, and then everything. It shaped the way you are in a certain way. But moral courage is the counter trait to obedience. And it can be developed. The question is whether you're going to take that, that's the blue pill, red pill kind of question. Are you going to light up that spark within you, or are you going to let it be dormant? Dormant is the word I was looking for.
Yeah, wow. I mean, that's very interesting. I mean, and I sometimes wonder if I look at our leadership or hope that they are taking the courage part, and then I sometimes have hopes, and I hear Robert Kennedy that wants to change a lot of things, and then at the end I again see how they a lot of them get corrupted at some point. I have the feeling. So in systems built on compliance, I sometimes wonder, the people rising to the top, are they actually the most compliant? Because, like, if you look at a party system often is just like a multiplication of the same idea, the party narrative, and people in a party usually aren't there really to speak their mind, but to support the party narrative, and that kind of brings the wrong people into systems of power. And you just were in El Salvador, right? So Bukele, for example, I also thought for a while, why did he get this IMF loan? I mean, what's going on? I mean, he betrayed us. I'm not sure if, I hope he has a strategy in his backhand that he actually still follows his Bitcoin, goals. What do you think about people in power? Do we have leaders that are actually not corrupt and in that respect also obedient?
So that's a good question. And I think that we can take the Bukele example and maybe put a parallel on that to ourselves as individuals, right? So, for example, you and I and many other people that are in the Bitcoin space that will listen to this, we all have to maneuver with our own ships inside rocky seas, right? It's the rocky sea or the river is our life. And it has many, sometimes the waves are very high, sometimes the sea is calm. But when things are rocky and the waves are high, it could be that there's a tragedy in the family that came in, or a breakdown of our relationship, or, something that happened in the workplace, or one of our children needs a surgery or something. There are many things that can come about. And we find ourselves like trying to navigate that ship inside that rocky river making economic decisions about our life and about our families' lives and the community. And we have to sometimes make hard choices or take hard decisions that ideally we wouldn't want to take. Like if, God forbid, like my son needed an operation or something like that, and I may need to sell some of my Bitcoin for that, to finance that. That's something I said that I never want to do. Like I never want to sell my Bitcoin. For example, I'd have to compromise on my ideals and do something in order to continue maneuvering my life in the best possible way. Or let's give a much more ordinary example that almost everyone that will listen to us is having to face, I believe, these days. KYC versus non-KYC, right? We all want privacy and we all want to use Bitcoin the way it's intended. And we don't want to collaborate with the institutions and do the KYC process and give them information about our wallets and our Bitcoin and where it's at and da-da-da. So like ideologically, we all want to do as much non-KYC and stick to the ethos of Bitcoin as much as possible. But then reality meets us and it's a little bit different. And we go, okay, I sold an apartment and maybe one day I sold an apartment and I put the money in Bitcoin. And maybe one day I would like to buy another house or apartment for my family, because it will be the right place and the right time and, in a few years' time or whatever. Or I found some amazing property in Costa Rica or Thailand and now I want to put money on it. And so I know I'd have to buy a property using the banks, because not everywhere is Argentina where you can just pay for an apartment with cash.
Oh, you can't there?
Yeah, that's how I was just there, and that's what they do there. They come with a bag of cash, 2 people, and they swap it and they sign a contract, and it's a whole other story. It's amazing. But in most other Western places around the world, if you want to buy a property, you need to go through the bank. Like there is no way around it. You can't take out cash and pay someone with cash. So if you need to go through the bank, that money that you got for the apartment you sold and you put it in Bitcoin will now have to go back to the banking system. And so you want to use a KYC system when you sell that apartment, to put it in a KYC wallet so that the bank will not give you problems when you want to put the money back, because now you will have to buy another apartment with it, and the bank will not take it back if they don't know where it came from, right? Because of the Bank Secrecy Act or whatever it's called in your own country, AML, CFT, whatever. So we compromise on our values and our ideologies in order to maneuver and make it work. So this is in our own small individual lives. And we go, oh, it's not a big deal. It's only my, Efrat's life. It's not such a big deal. No, God doesn't think that this is a sin. But then when the Prime Minister of El Salvador does a very similar thing, he does a very similar thing. But what he does is for a country. His system is way bigger than my system in my life, because he controls the whole country. So he then looks at the powers and the river that is very, very bumpy and the waves are very high. And then he's got China from one direction and the US from another direction, and the IMF that can crush him if they want to, because El Salvador, with all due respect, is still a very small country that has no central bank. I remind you, that has no currency of its own. It's like highly dependent on the United States still. And if the powers that be wanted to crush them, they could, in my belief, in my opinion. And so he has all these facets of power against him, and he's looking at how to maneuver his ship in the best possible way. And he goes, okay, they're putting pressure on me. If they don't get from me something that they want, I need to continue playing that game while I free up my people to buy Bitcoin, hold Bitcoin, not pay taxes for Bitcoin, learn about Bitcoin. I teach them about it in schools. I show them what freedom and self-sovereignty is. I allow them to do whatever they want. I allow startups to be set up here with like very friendly environment and da-da-da. So like he's playing that game, trying to maneuver. That's how I see it. That's how I'm reading the landscape that El Salvador is playing in. But we look at him and you go, you lied to us, you failed us, right? And they have to maneuver. The systems that they're in are so much more difficult than the ones we handle in our individual lives. They're so much bigger and have so many more facets of power that the compromises that they make are similar to the compromises we make in our lives, but we judge them differently. So that's how I see it. And I believe, and this is not, by the way, to protect or whitewash any politician. I have a lot of criticism on politicians, and I don't trust all of them, if not most of them, 99.9% of them. I don't trust them, but I did have the privilege of speaking to a handful, close to a dozen politicians over the past 3 years through my podcast, and I've interviewed some of them. And I choose them carefully because I follow them a long time, and then I ask them for an interview. And the ones I identify are the ones that I feel work for their constituents, work for the public. They really do what a politician is supposed to do, being a public servant, serve the public. And people like Christine Anderson in Germany, or oh, damn, I'm blanking out.
Joanna Kotar.
Joanna Kotar,
Yeah.
that I interviewed as well. Senator Malcolm Roberts in Australia.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, John Rudick in Australia, the Libertarian Party. There are many more of them, by the way, throughout the world, and they're really different people than what normal default politicians are. And when you speak to them and you dive into what drives them and why they do what they do, you see that they actually want to serve the people. I believe Bukele is one of those. And I believe that the IMF loan was to keep the IMF pacified, or the larger powers, pacified, while he continues to build what he wants to build in the country. And it takes time. And with Robert Kennedy, I'm not sure. It's a little bit different, but it's, I don't know about him. But I continue to observe. I don't put my trust in any politician, and I think that's the important lesson here. I do believe that they are like when you make a choice to become a politician, you choose to willingly go into a system that is highly, highly corrupt. And you should know that. I think they know that. And when you step into a corrupt system, the odds that you will not be corrupted are very low because the incentive structure is set up in such a way that you will be rewarded for complying with the corruption. And so it's very hard to be a different type of politician. And you suffer a lot of blows, like during COVID, the ones that the brave ones that were willing to speak out, politicians, they were completely shunned and censored, and it was ridiculous. They're the ones that's supposed to have political immunity and all that shit. Ridiculous.
Yeah, absolutely. But I mean, if you were in that position, a lot of people knew that something wasn't right. I knew that, and I mean they get recognition for it now, I think, and yeah, there are certainly some. I recently talked to Thierry Baudet. He was the one in Dutch politics, and he took a lot of beatings, and yeah. Apparently, it's about compromises in power. And I mean, latest example was with Donald Trump inviting Albert Bourla, the CEO of Pfizer, giving him 70 billion euros I thought,
Yeah, but in that specific case, I don't think that that's a compromise. I think that that's
probably not.
selling
Yeah.
out already. Like there's a line there where
But
you can
also,
say, oh, okay, he's compromising, or he's like selling out and playing the game. There are certain things that I look at and I go, come on.
absolutely.
You don't need to do that.
But also, you were talking about reputation. So Donald Trump also said he would release the Epstein files, and half a year later, there were no Epstein files. And also with regards to Bukele, I mean, I was totally disappointed because he had this very bold stance, and then all of a sudden he changed his strategy. And if it's a strategy, then all fine. But still, the public.
Why do you think he changed his strategy? I don't think he did.
Well, he was very bold and outspoken, and he said, we're going to, I think, buy 1 Bitcoin every day or every month. Or
Well, they show that they still do that. That's a very enigmatic, very weird kind of thing that is still happening with the IMF saying you're not allowed to do that anymore and them doing it. Like recently, they have bought $100 million worth of Bitcoin for their reserve.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I also see people that analyze it and said they were just shifting the Bitcoins around. I don't know. I hope.
If they're lying about buying $100 million worth of Bitcoin, then that will be exposed and it will be wow. And I may be wrong, and I'm willing to say that I'm wrong when I'm wrong, but I think that that is a very bold lie. So I don't think they're lying, and and to be honest, look at everything else that they're doing for Bitcoin. Like the legal tender is just a legal definition, but Bitcoin is still accepted and endorsed and embraced in El Salvador. People are still being taught about it. They are still calling the place the Bitcoin country. Like they printed a book for us at the Bitcoin Historical with his photo on the front with his government office. Actually, it's a government-led event about Bitcoin, and the title of the book is El Salvador is Bitcoin country. You know, he doesn't have to do it, as you said. He can backtrack and stop doing all of that, but they continue. So,
yeah, I mean, I said, okay, I'm not going to go to El Salvador anymore. It's not the Bitcoin country for me anymore. I'm willing to change my position because most people who went there are actually still very, very positive about it. A last topic is you're very much into CBDCs, right? So with regards to obedience and systemic obedience, so us not really having a choice, being forced into a system where you don't really have a choice. Once there is CBDCs, once there's possibly digital ID, chat control, big topic in Europe. But let's say once there are CBDCs in place, what can we do with our courage? That's not going to be enough anymore. I mean, what is the outlook here?
what do you mean that's not going to be enough anymore?
What I mean is that if you have a system in place that totally monitors your communication, your spending, everything you do, you can eliminate any kind of resistance in its tracks. So people might wake up and start to want to fight that. But if I look at Iran, for example, they had the revolution a couple of years ago, and it didn't really work out. So once you're in a system that is totalitarian, then we might be stuck there for quite a long time.
Oh, yeah.
Technology is so far ahead that it's going to be more and more difficult. So,
yeah, I agree with you. So, okay, thanks for elaborating a bit. So here are my thoughts. First of all, I invite everyone to watch the conference that I produced with Professor Matthias Desmet that was called New Totalitarian Order. It was earlier this year, and it's a 3-hour conference that we did in Israel, actually, to a not relatively, but to, I believe, an awakened audience that is on board with us about resisting and not being obedient for everything and questioning, etc. And he came to Israel, and we did this conference. It was amazing, and we're talking about exactly those topics and the risk of a Western country turning into a totalitarian country is very real. In fact, I believe it's already happening. And that's my message when I talk about CBDCs and digital IDs and all that stuff, and the censorship and, the DSA, the chat control, whatever. It's happening already. We are in the process of it. This is not an overnight thing. This is not you go to sleep, you wake up in the morning, and you have a big sign outside your house saying, "Welcome to a totalitarian Germany." No, it's never going to happen. It's always the gradual approach. It's always step by step to take you there. And you wake up 2 years later or 4 years later, and you understand what kind of reality you are living in. So the wake-up call is right now, is here. Hey, wake up. It's happening. Now the only question is choice and agency. As we said before, you always have a choice, always, even when it's very, very dark. And there are ways in which you can take back your power and be willing to pay the prices and for the consequences that your choice dictates. So it may mean workplace changes, living place changes, career changes, family, friends changes. It may mean a whole lot of considerations and changes you will have to make in your life, but you always have the choice. And then it's a question of courage, moral courage. Are you willing to take all these actions that may have consequences in your life in order to make a change? Or are you staying there and you just keep complaining? And that's a choice. And either way is okay. Either way is valid. It's your choice. You're free to choose whatever you want. But if you choose to stay and to not change anything in your life, for example, your neighbors or your friends keep knocking on your door telling you, study Bitcoin because it's going to save you from this CBDC. And you choose to ignore them and not to do it, even though it's becoming louder and louder and louder, and they keep on trying to warn you, that's your choice. It's fine. But if you are brave enough, you'll go, okay, this is something I don't know. I don't understand anything about money. And now I'm going to dive into this, and I'm going to actually read a book or listen to a podcast or whatever, or come with my friend to a meetup and just see what that thing is and how it can help me, and learn about the differences between state-controlled KYC, blah, 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 and Bitcoin and what it really is. So there's always a choice, and the choice may be little, the choice may be big. The choices will be in every area of your life. The more you wait, the harder it gets. I always,
But is there really always a choice?
I believe so.
You can
I believe so.
You can
This is
say
the
that
nice part.
to women in Iran. I mean, yeah, for sure, yeah. But
Yeah, I mean, for women in Iran, there is very little that they can do. But you and I having that conversation here right now is in order for people not to get to the point where they are a woman in Iran or a person in Gaza or something like that. Like, we are doing this so that they can, wake up.
yeah.
If they choose not to, and they get to a situation where they're like a woman in Iran, then in their very small, narrow window of freedom in life, they can do something. But, there are some really brave Iranian women that are doing something, but it's hard. And their route to freedom, to liberation, is going to be much longer and harder than other people's route. But it's a route. It exists. It's just super hard. And
Yeah.
I hope most people won't get there. But yeah, it's real and it's coming. And I think people need to wake up and decide, what kind of plan B am I going to create for myself? What kind of second citizenship? What kind of other place around the world do I feel comfortable moving to if I need to? What kind of money am I going to be using? What kind of tools, technological tools am I going to be adopting in my life to minimize the level of invasion to my privacy?
Any tips you have? You have any
Sure.
tips?
Well, first of all, Noster. Just to not be, this is like the quickest way to face Western censorship online and social media. If you want to make sure that you can continue speaking out, you can continue sharing content and have a visibility online, you want to have an Noster account, you want to start being active there. You need to understand that if someone closes the app that you're using for Noster, you can take your social graph, your private and public key, and go to another app and continue from the same spot. So you don't need to start from zero, like me when Telegram banned me the other day. Yeah, they closed my account, so I don't have access to the 2 channels I was running with 6,000 and 2,000 people in each. And I can't have access to this anymore. It's gone. That's it. I start from zero.
But
I don't start because I'm not going to give Telegram my time of day. I put that energy into Noster. But you can be censored. You can be closed down at any minute. Like the next regulation or legislation that's going to come may say something about you, or it's enough. This other day, a woman here in Florida told me that she was from New York, and when COVID just started, she was on Twitter, 2020, 2021, and she was just following certain dissident voices. She was never sharing their stuff. She was just following them and liking from time to time. Her account was closed down. No explanation. Just closed down. And I know many people that similar things happened to them. That was the time back when still Jack Dorsey was running it, and the censorship was horrible. Before Elon Musk took over. So, you never know. And if you want to be prepared and be present online, have a Noster account. That's your plan B for online. Then there are tools like, for example, white noise that are starting to be developed over Noster. That are encrypted chat services over Noster, like Signal, but just decentralized. It's still going to take time. They're working on it, but it's already, like, the first version is already out. And I use Signal today more and more. And I try to, like, every new person I meet, I communicate with them on Signal instead of WhatsApp or the other centralized places. There are other privacy tools. So there are AIs that are more private than ChatGPT or Grok, right? On the privacy levels, they're horrible.
Today I watched a video. Telegram founder Pavel Durov introduced his new AI Cocoon with decentralized setup. So then I wonder,
setup.
yeah, it's where the computing power is not like on Amazon. It's not centralized, so everyone can become a distributor of processing power. And then again, when you get canceled, then I wonder. Well, it just makes clear that we need real solid decentralized solution where, like Bitcoin, where government cannot just intervene. Because in the case of Pavel Durov, who's responsible for your censorship in the case of Telegram?
He's still under the laws of the countries the jurisdictions that he operates in. So it's still a centralized entity that they can choke, and they are doing that. Otherwise, I wouldn't be banned, because I don't think I've done anything wrong on Pavel's account, but certain countries may not like me. So anyway, I mean, just people need to start educating themselves about privacy tools more. and about, well, just the notion of let's make privacy great again, right? Like people are talking about privacy as if it's a forbidden concept. What do I have to hide? No. You need your privacy. We all need our privacy. And so that's something I would encourage people to do. Obviously, Bitcoin, learning about Bitcoin. And yeah, second citizenships for sure. The other tool I would recommend for safe like tech, privacy tech and stuff like that is Brave browser. She's a good browser.
Okay. Mm.
And instead of Chrome or the other ones, and of course, Tor, if you want to go completely private. It's like those tools are probably less convenient, but there's always a trade-off in terms of your freedom and privacy and convenience. The other thing I would mention is decentralizing your health. I mean, a good prism, a lens to look at your life from when you start thinking about solutions is to look at where there is too much dependency on a third party or a central entity, or too much dependency in general on anything, anyone, even if it's, you completely dependent on your spouse for something and you don't have your individual. I'm not trying to break up couples at all. I'm just saying people need to be literate enough and educated enough to stand on their own 2 feet if something happens, and in order to educate their children. And too much dependence on anything is not a good thing. So when you can start looking at your life and ask yourself the question, what am I too dependent on? And where is there too much power concentrated? And how can I dismantle that power, decentralize that power? How can I put that power in various sources rather than being under one source? And then you look at banking, you look at relationships, you look at health, you look at various things, right? That question opens up a whole way of looking at life in a different way. So my aim in life is to minimize my interface with the institutions as much as I can in terms of taxes, banking, health, citizenships, money, every area of my life, including relationships. Yes. Am I too dependent on someone and I need to reclaim back my power and fix something in that relationship as I go forward? Right. So I think that's a very healthy way of reclaiming your agency and your power back. And I'm not saying become a hermit and become an individual that is completely secluded from society and life. No, not at all. I love people. I love communities. I love being with people. But I have a very strong sovereign life now. And I'm a sovereign individual. Obviously not perfect, not 100%, but, more and more as I learn and practice things in my life, because I have the courage to do it and the moral values to follow. And I'm not afraid to try new things.
Well, are you still there?
Yep.
Okay, I didn't know that a WhatsApp call can interrupt that. Did you hear it? Anyway,
Yeah,
I'll cut it out.
I did.
Yeah. Wow. Like final tip, where's the safest place in your view to go to if you think about moving
You mean
away?
countries?
Yeah.
Oof, that's a tough question. That's why I work with smart people. I do, like my sponsors of the show. I have some companies that I work with that's the kind of service that they provide. But so they're the experts on this. But from my tours in the last 2 years, and I've been in many places, there are a few places where I feel like they're up there on my list to live in when I decide to settle down. So one of them is Thailand, on the island of Koh Phangan. That's where I feel great. El Salvador is definitely on my list. I don't like Europe. I mean, in terms of the EU, and I don't like what's happening in Europe. But if I had to stay in Europe, I'd probably, like, if I was European and had to stay in Europe, I'd probably go to Prague, which is, like, I think in general, the Eastern European countries are better off than the other Western European countries. Switzerland is great in my eyes, like, relatively speaking, right? Nowhere is perfect, but Lugano, Switzerland, Bitcoin community, the friendliness towards it, I love it. It's expensive, so it's not for everyone, but the tax system is different, and yeah, there's a lot of benefits in going to Lugano. So that's also on my list. If I was to live in the US, which I probably will not, I enjoyed Austin, Texas, Florida. Those are two places that I really enjoyed. And another place that's on my list, like two more places that are on my list that I haven't visited yet, but I think I will, are Costa Rica and Panama. I would like to go and check them out. I know they're both pretty interesting for sovereign individuals, so I may try them as well. Dubai is a place I know that is convenient for many people, but it's totally not my style, so I will not live in Dubai. But it's a possibility for, if you like that style of place, too fake for me to, like, I need nature more. It's not for me. So yeah, this is my list.
Sounds good. Yeah. So South America also, especially. Yeah. I mean, Europe is not
I can
heading.
always live in Australia, by the way. I have an Australian citizenship, but
okay.
I don't
Okay.
want to.
Okay. Yeah. Well, after
Similar to
COVID.
Europe in a way.
Yeah. Yeah, I live in Europe, in Berlin, and things are really not going in the right direction. I mean, we're heading towards being able to access the internet only with a digital ID. Where there's
I know.
like chat control. Now they're starting with minimum age you need, all for protecting
Same
children.
in Australia, exactly the same thing. And in Israel, they're going to do the same as well. So yeah, they're all Western countries. This is Agenda 2030. This is very simple. It's all playing out according to the playbook.
Yeah. So let's keep speaking up. Let's find solutions, use solutions to, stay sovereign. Well, thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much for your effort, for speaking up, for the courage, for taking the risk also, and for all the work you do. And probably see you around on the next conference.
Yes, thank you so much for having me, Daniel, and thanks for diving into this super important topic.